and that's the maternity leave. I applaud the member in his actions to date to try to ensure that there was a debate on the issue. He's been very successful at doing so, and I think what we should focus our attention on the Standing Committee and allow the Standing Committee to do its job too. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And with that, I think we're going to go to, in fact, we're going to go to statements by members. Déclaration de député, the Honourable Député de Joliette.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the Commission des Finances Publiques du Québec tabled a unanimous report on tax havens. Among other things, the report called on the government to stop giving contracts to companies that use or encourage tax havens. But we learned today that PPP Canada wants to retain the services of a company to analyze the Metropolitan Electric Network in Montreal. Which company is on the list of companies under consideration? Well, you guessed it, Mr. Speaker. It's the fraudster-in-chief, the buddy of those tiny tax-exempt islands, the gentleman thief, KPMG. This company is a privileged supplier for PPP Canada, but it would be better placed to advise the government about building a train system in Barbados rather than Quebec. The federal government needs to stop giving our tax money away to white-collar criminals. It needs to reject KPMG's service offer, and it needs to take it off its list of service providers immediately.
Honourable Member for Surrey Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this week Sikhs around the world celebrate Vaisakhi, the day Guru Gobind Singh created an identity of women and men who would be tasked to uphold equality, justice, and freedom of faith for all. He crowned them with turbans, told them never to bow down, but always look to those in need. Growing up, every Sikh will have a story, someone who inspired them to this path, someone who taught them on the legacies of their ancestors, the sacrifices they made to maintain their identities. And for me, Mr. Speaker, it was Harbhajan Singh Khalsa Yogiji. He came to Canada in 1968 and opened the gateway to Sikh Dharma in the West. He taught me to see the greatness in all, to uplift everyone who was down, and live with grace. Today, I'm fortunate to have 3 generations of his family, his wife, Dr. Inderjeet Kaur, children Kulbir and Kawaljit, and grandson Angad join us as we celebrate this great day, and I wish to say thank you.
The Honourable Member for Gull River.
I'd like to recognize the Mayor of the City of Brooks, Barry Morishita, who is on the Hill with us today. On a serious note, in August 1982, Ron Smith, a Canadian in Montana, murdered 2 cousins from the Blackfoot Nation. Thomas Running Rabbit and Harvey Madman were brutally murdered by Smith, executed in a heinous way. These 2 innocent young men were not guilty of anything other than offering a ride to Smith. Thankfully, Smith was convicted of the murders in the American system and was sentenced to death. Because of circumstances in Montana, the likelihood that this sentence will ever be carried out is nil. Ronald Smith belongs behind bars for life. However, the Liberal government is attempting to intervene so that he can be brought back to Canada, where there's a good chance he'll be set free. I've met with the family of Thomas Running Rabbit, and they've been very clear. They want Smith to stay where he is for taking away and murdering their beloved family members. The Liberals must respect the will of the Running Rabbit family and leave Ronald Smith where he belongs.
The Honourable Member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, I proudly rise today to bring national attention to Newmarket's newest hero, Connor McDavid. In only his 2nd year in the NHL, he's already the captain of the Edmonton Oilers, and he led the league in scoring with 30 goals and 70 assists. His 100-point season captured him the Art Ross Trophy. He is, in my opinion, one of the greatest hockey players in the world today. He played minor hockey both in Newmarket and Aurora, and with our local AAA team, the York Simcoe Express. Connor has never forgotten his roots. In fact, last year he was skating in Newmarket at the training rinks while the Tykes were practicing at the same time. He allowed this group of 6-year-olds to watch him practice. The wide-eyed enthusiasm was amazing. My son was one of those boys. He will never forget being that close to greatness. Connor also supports Newmarket's drive for a community outdoor arena and has been instrumental in the fundraising. 10 young players will win the chance to skate with Connor this year. Connor, on behalf of everyone in Newmarket and Aurora, I want to congratulate you and your parents, Brian and Kelly.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, As we mark the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, I'm honored today to recognize the immense contribution of the regiment today known as the Sherbrooke Hussars. They were created in 1866 in Melbourne, Quebec, and the regiment was mobilized for active service starting in 1914. They participated in many battles, including the Battle of the Somme, Arras, Vimy, Ypres, and Passchendaele. They would make an important contribution to Canada during World War II, notably during the Normandy landing, but also during operations in Hong Kong. And of course, they were also involved in recent peacekeeping operations. A ball is planned for May 6th to mark the end of the festivities of the 150th anniversary of the Sherbrooke Hussars, and I'm convinced that all citizens of Sherbrooke will join me in marking this important anniversary, and they will also help me thank the soldiers for their sacrifices. Let's take advantage of this celebration to remind the government of the importance of restoring the William Manège in my riding.
Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, this week our Prime Minister, members of this House and other Canadians are recognizing Canada's contribution to World War I. And I'd like to pay tribute to a family who gave dearly. The Livingston family from my hometown of the Bullingdry Island lost 3 young brothers in World War I, and they say their father died of a broken heart right after the war because of losing his 3 boys. Hugh was the first son to lose his life in the Battle of Ypres, followed by Charles in the Battle of the Somme, and then David in the Battle of Cambrai. On Bullingdry Island, 22 young men in total died in World War I, and many others were wounded. There is a monument at Big Medora St. James Church Cemetery commemorating these brothers and others who fought for their country. Another hero from my riding was Percival William Anderson, who led the Nova Scotia Highlanders to capture the infamous Hill 145 that determined the victory on Vimy Ridge. He lost his life later in Passchendaele. These young men came from farming, fishing, lumber, and coal mining families. I ask members in this House to join me in remembering them and the thousands of others who didn't come home from this war that defined our nation.
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, Southeast Saskatchewan, Estevan, and the Oldfields lost a giant of a man, Art Wróblewski, who passed away this past week. Art, known as Mr. Core, started Wróblewski Coring, which later merged to become A&A Coring. He was an incredible man with a heart of gold, and he received the Oilman Lifetime Achievement Award from the Estevan Oilfield Technical Society in January of 2010. As Art's son Wade put it, Dad was never afraid to take a chance and was successful because of his desire to succeed and his strong work ethic. Art was an avid golfer and curler, and he always made time to volunteer. He would help run golf tournaments and bonspiels and funded and constructed the first golf shed at the course. I can still picture Art out on the course with his grandson Braden up on the 5th green. I would like to extend my condolences to his brother Ed and sister Erna, his children Dale, Randy, Wade, Brenda, and Denise, and his many grandchildren. Know that he and Alice will live on in our hearts.
The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges.
Marked the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge, a battle that saw our branches of military fight together for the first time.
Today, we take the time to honour our Canadian heroes who fought to protect French territory and who experienced horrors both during and after the war. Mr. Speaker, today is a day of commemoration for the families of the thousands of soldiers who were injured or who fell at Vimy. But it's also a time to honour all Canadian soldiers and their families, past and present.
I rise in this House to express my sincere gratitude to my community's very own Maxime Brett, who proudly served as a nurse during the Second World War and who graciously represented Vaudreuil-Soulanges' proud military heritage in Vimy, France this past weekend. I rise to also honour those who fought in the Battle of Vimy Ridge and thank our local Legion in Hudson, Branch 115, for their tireless work serving veterans for over 70 years. Lest we forget, n'oublions jamais.
Honourable member for Ajax.
I had the honor of meeting with firefighters from my hometown of Ajax today as firefighters met with parliamentarians coming from all parts of the country. And the work that they do, protecting us, whether or not we're in Ajax or Fort McMurray, in any part of this country, is so deeply valued. We have some of the best trained, most dedicated firefighters in the world we're incredibly proud to have them and to talk with them today. And that's why in the last election, in the 2015 election, we promised to create a one-time payment for the surviving family of a fallen first responder, including firefighters. And I'm proud to say, after extensive consultations in the 2017 budget, we're making good on that promise, setting aside $20 million per year to create a tax-free benefit to support the families of public safety officers who've fallen in the line of duty. Mr. Speaker, it's an incredibly proud moment for us to see that happen today.
Honourable member for Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, the great 18th century parliamentarian and outspoken advocate of representative government, Edmund Burke, warned the House of Commons about being bullied by Cabinet over 250 years ago when he warned that to exchange independence for protection will court a subservient existence through the favour of those ministers or those secret advisors, Burke must have been talking about Gerald Butts, who ought themselves to stand in awe of the Commons of this realm. And so I urge my colleagues across the way, especially those on the back benches, to learn from Burke, learn from the founders of Confederation from all parties, and learn from recent prime ministers such as Jean Chrétien and Stephen Harper, and give this House the respect it deserves, maintain our parliamentary privileges, do not let this Prime Minister, his cabinet, and his unelected advisors change the standing orders without unanimous consent of all parties.
The honourable member for Mississauga-Streetsville.
Mr. Speaker, Vaisakhi marks the Sikh New Year and commemorates the formation of the Khalsa Panth of warriors. Seeing as we just commemorated the 100th anniversary of Vimy Ridge, I would like to highlight the little-known fact that Sikh Canadians served with the Canadian Army in the First World War, and recognize Sunta Gurjar Singh, Quebec Regiment, killed October 1915, Harry Singh, Reserve Battalion, Royal Canadian Dragons, Harnom Singh, 143rd Railway Construction Battalion, John Singh, 108th Overseas Battalion, Lashman Singh, 75th Battalion, killed October 1918, Ram Singh, Seva Singh, 1st Canadian Reserves Battalion, Variam Singh, 38th Battalion, Eastern Ontario Regiment, John Babu, wounded at Vimy Ridge, and Buckham Singh, 20th Canadian Infantry, and was wounded twice. Vaisakhi Di Vidanya, lest we forget. Thank you.
Honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Monsieur le Président. Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the 25th anniversary of Tourisme Autochtone Québec, the first Aboriginal tourist organization in Canada. The Aboriginal tourism industry in Canada is important because it distinguishes Canada as a unique tourist destination while respecting and strengthening the traditions and cultures that are so vital to their communities. That's why our government has invested $8.6 million over 4 years to help develop this tourist industry and to help implement a 5-year plan for Aboriginal tourism. I would like to thank Steve Wadahadik Grolui, the president of Tourisme Autochtone Québec, as well as all those who work in the Aboriginal tourism industry in Canada and who make Canada a unique and original destination. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, with a nod to Paul Simon, don't shake your head, the budget's author said to me. A cluster budget's easy if you take it logically. Taxing Uber transit beer while spending uncontrollably, there must be 50 ways to shaft Canadians. He said it's really not his style to mope and brood. Sure, billions gone, no jobs, no growth. It can't be misconstrued. Re-announcing, pre-announcing, smoke and mirrors are his tool. Must be 50 ways to shaft Canadians. He don't have the knack, Jack. He needs a new plan, Stan. Innovation's a ploy, Roy. Small biz, just not key. Job creation's a bust, Gus. Infrastructure, not so much. As such, forget debt to GDP, Lee. PM thinks cash is free. He says he didn't think his budget would cause so much pain, but doesn't know what he might do to make us smile again. Canadians ask then, would he please again explain about the 50 ways he shafted Canadians? He don't have the knack, Jack.
Honourable member for Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to mark the 25th anniversary of the Micronutrients Initiative, a Canadian success story that is world-renowned in eradicating malnutrition. This anniversary is also marked by a name change. The initiative is now known as Nutrition International, a name that better reflects its role as a development partner and a champion of nutrition.
I'm also pleased to congratulate a constituent of mine, Kathy Zader, who was recently awarded the Sovereign's Medal for volunteers for founding FibroMoves, a warm water pool rehabilitation program intended to help fibromyalgia sufferers, and for teaching the program voluntarily for the past 10 years. Please join me in congratulating Nutrition International and Kathy for their successes and wish them many more in the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
1.6 million Canadians report an unmet need for mental health care, and 7.5 million Canadians live with a mental health illness. For more than a century, Riverview Hospital provided mental health services in BC. The provincial government intends to put market housing on these lands. However, the residents of Port Moody Coquitlam have a different plan. They'd like to see a National Centre for Mental Health Excellence focused on seniors' issues like dementia and Alzheimer's, youth issues like stress, anxiety, and addiction, services for First Nations like addiction and suicide prevention, and services to help our veterans and first responders with issues like operational stress injuries. Their vision includes drop-in centres for addiction treatment, a medical services research park, and a world-class arboretum. One thing it doesn't include is market housing. I'm proud to support this vision. I call on the federal government to work with the Coalition for a Healthy Riverview to help create this National Centre for Mental Health Excellence before the BC Liberals put market housing on these lands, ignoring the wishes of our community.
Honourable member for Portage-Lisgar.
Mr. Speaker, the most persecuted and victimized and attacked religious group in the world today are Christians. Over the weekend, dozens of Christians were brutally murdered while attending Palm Sunday ceremonies in Egypt. This isn't an isolated or rare incident. Just last December, 25 Christians were killed after a church was bombed in Cairo. Christians throughout the Middle East have been targets of deadly violence for years, with the most vicious attacks reserved for Christmas and Easter. Christians living in the Middle East and throughout Africa are targeted by radical Islamic terrorists because they've decided to worship Jesus Christ and not follow Islam. Unfortunately, persecuted Christians don't have many champions in the West. We don't often hear of Hollywood stars talking about Christians being massacred while they're accepting their awards. In fact, many of the elite readily join in the mockery and the disdain shown to Christians. These are very sad realities, but they must be faced and they must be called out. In this Holy Week, I pray that the world, particularly leaders here in the West, pay attention to the plight of persecuted Christians and do all we can to stand with them.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, I feel very privileged today to welcome to Ottawa a group of 50 students from my riding of Shefford. This group of young people study at the École Secondaire du Verbe Divin, a school that I myself attended, and of which I still have many fond memories. We often hear that young people are not interested in politics. That's why I'm so pleased that these young high school students are taking a course in policy and governance. Their visit to this house is the culmination of their long study of the legislative process of the Parliament of Canada. And I'm thrilled to award them a certificate in recognition of their efforts and their interest in the democratic process. I congratulate the students for their work and their teachers, including Ms. Charrier, for their initiative. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in January, the Prime Minister claimed that he had no choice but to take a private helicopter to the Aga Khan's Island. He said there were no other options. It turns out that that is not true. His staff, in fact, arrived at the island by commercial plane, and that bill was picked up by taxpayers too. It's bad enough that the Prime Minister chose to vacation at one of the most expensive destinations in the world when taxpayers have to pay. But why did the Prime Minister tell Canadians a private helicopter was his only option when he knew it was against the law, against his own ethical guidelines, and now we find out it wasn't even true?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said a number of times in this House, this was a personal family vacation, and of course happy to work with the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner to answer any questions that she may have.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Not an answer.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's not an answer to our question. This is not a conversation between him and the Ethics Commissioner. In fact, he told all Canadians publicly that, in fact, he had no other option. So the question is very simple. Why did the Prime Minister say he had no other option when, in fact, he did? In fact, his staff took the other option, which is a commercial flight. He knew taking this private helicopter was against the law. It was against his own ethical guidelines, and now we find out it wasn't even true. Why did he tell Canadians this if it wasn't true?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this was a personal family vacation, and I'm happy to work with the Ethics Commissioner, Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner on any questions she may have. Furthermore, on prime ministerial travel, as is always the case, the RCMP makes determinations around what is the safest way for the Prime Minister to travel.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, no one has begrudged the Prime Minister a vacation, but first of all, Mr. Speaker, when he chose to vacation at one of the most expensive places in the world, knowing full well taxpayers have to pay for wherever he goes for security, that was a choice he made. But second of all, he's told all Canadians that he thought there was no other option. Now he's saying the RCMP told him he had to take a private helicopter. Is he saying today then that the RCMP told him to break the law?
All right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to work with the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner on the details of my personal family vacation. As I've said, the RCMP makes determinations around the safest way for the Prime Minister to travel.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition. This is 4.
Mr. Speaker, immediately after taking office, the Prime Minister loosened sanctions on Iran and began normalizing relations with Russia. He even had a name for this policy. He called it responsible conviction. We have another name. We call it dangerously naive. Everyone knows that if it weren't for Russia and Iran, Bashar al-Assad would no longer be in power. Now that the Prime Minister is committed to regime change in Syria, will he first commit to restoring sanctions against Iran and support our conservative legislation to toughen sanctions against Russia?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canada works with the international community to apply sanctions on a broad range of nations, and it ensures that we are holding governments and their leaders to account on a broad range of issues. We have chosen a way of engaging responsibly with even those people with whom we disagree, because we do believe that having diplomatic relations, having good conversations with difficult partners is an important role that Canada can and must play on the world stage.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has on the record now saying he's committed to regime change in Syria. This is a regime that is propped up by Russia and Iran, and now he's saying that we can continue to have conversations with these regimes who are also supporters of violations of human rights and genocide. What is the Prime Minister's plan? Was he going to continue to have this policy of responsible conviction which loosens sanctions on Iran and normalizes relations with Russia when they clearly support Bashar al-Assad? What is his plan?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our Foreign Minister was last week in Brussels talking with the international community about the path forward for Syria, and is right now in Italy with G7 foreign ministers exactly to discuss how we move forward on holding the Assad regime to account, and indeed those countries that have been supporting the Assad regime. It's important that the international community speak with one clear, strong voice. That is exactly what we're working hard to ensure.
Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister once famously said, "I'm not middle class, and I don't pretend that I am." So I guess vacationing on a private billionaire's island was just him proving his point. But he's just not entitled to his entitlements, Mr. Speaker. Oh, no. He's also entitled to not follow the rules that govern all of us because he believes he's above the rules. He told Canadians, and I quote, "Travel back and forth from Nassau happens on the Aga Khan's private helicopter," and that, quote, "only happens through private means." Yet today we learned that the Prime Minister's excuse is categorically false. So does he wish to change his story, or does he wish to continue to mislead Canadians?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said many times in this House, this was a personal family vacation, and I'm more than happy to engage with the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner on exactly these issues and any issues that she may raise. On the issue of travel, the RCMP makes determinations around the safest way for the Prime Minister to travel. Thank you.
Honourable député de Jonquière.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, we have nothing against the Prime Minister taking a vacation, but this Prime Minister had promised to be transparent, not just with the Ethics Commissioner, but with all Canadians. We expect him to answer questions here in the House. He said publicly, and I quote, trips to Nassau are done on the Aga Khan's private helicopter. He told Canadians that trips to the island, and I quote once again, are only done via private means. So my question for the Prime Minister is this: why did he mislead Canadians? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to answer questions from the Ethics Commissioner with the Ethics and Conflict of Interest Commissioner, and to answer any questions she may have with respect to our private family vacation. As I've often said, the RCMP makes determinations around the safest way for the Prime Minister to travel. Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning, the Quebec National Assembly looked into an emergency debate on legal delays in the province that have led to the release of a man having been accused of slitting his wife's throat. When we questioned the minister on the file yesterday, she said that she was proud of the process that the government had put in place. We understand why Minister Vallée in Quebec City said yesterday that the minister is disconnected from Quebec's reality. Mr. Speaker, what is the minister proud of? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we put in place a new process for appointments which is objective, open, which ensures that nominations reflect the diversity of Canadians. As regards to the federal court and the judicial positions in Quebec, I can say that there are 163 federal justices in Quebec. We are working on filling the last 6 positions which are vacant.
Langford.
I see the Prime Minister still failing to take responsibility for this. Mr. Speaker, while violent offenders are let back on the streets, this Prime Minister is perfectly happy to continue to give criminal records to young and racialized Canadians for pot possession. The Liberals are now hiding how many have been charged since they took power. With legalization at least 15 months away, can the Prime Minister please explain why he won't, in the meantime, put an end to these types of charges, especially when he himself has admitted to the crime?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Very happy to answer the honourable member's question. We are legalizing and controlling the sale of marijuana with 2 goals in mind: protecting our young people from the easy access they have to marijuana right now. It's easier for a teenager to buy a joint than a bottle of beer, Mr. Speaker, and that's not right. Secondly, we want to remove from criminal organizations and street gangs the billions of dollars in profits they make. And until this House chooses to legalize and control marijuana, the law remains the law.
Order, please. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Order. Mr. Speaker, we agree that the law is the law. Well, he needs to ensure that when the law needs to be enforced and people need to remain in prison, that's what happens. Mr. Speaker, the Quebec government is urging the government to take action because this is causing problems in courts in Quebec. The Quebec minister is talking about 14 positions, the Prime Minister 6. We need to have some resolution on these matters and get the numbers straight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We recognize that
this is an important issue. That's why we're taking concrete action to address this issue. I am pleased to have appointed 47 Superior Court justices, 22 deputy judges across the country. There are 6 vacancies remaining in the province of Quebec. Further to that, I am working with my counterparts in the provinces and territories to address the issue of delays, which, according to the Supreme Court of Canada, requires a culture shift. That is why we're working towards having a meeting among all provinces and territories and the federal government to ensure we move forward with substantive solutions to resolve delays.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't seem to be a serious issue for the minister. Yesterday she said there isn't a single solution and appointing 6 judges in Quebec won't resolve the problem with delays. I want to hear what her solution is. What is the solution to solve these problems mentioned by the Quebec Minister of Justice, the Quebec government? It's dragging on. Their process, Mr. Speaker, I have analyzed it, but it isn't resolving anything. And when we want to have a woman in a region, you work with people. We work to have men and women appointed judges. Please simply appoint someone.
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Again, Mr. Speaker, we are moving forward with appointing judges to the superior courts across the country. I'm very pleased to have appointed 47 judges across the country, including 22 deputy judges. Further, I'm proud of the fact that Budget 2017 opened up space for 28 new judicial appointments, which we will continue to fill. In terms of the no one solution, court delays, as the Supreme Court of Canada has talked about, require a culture shift, a move from complacency. It's going to require not only the federal government, but the provinces and territories to come up with substantive solutions to resolve the delays.
Honourable Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, it's obvious the Prime Minister isn't being honest with Canadians about his trip to Billionaire Island. He claimed taking a private helicopter was the only way he could get to the private island, but one of his staff made the same trip on a commercially chartered seaplane. He's given taxpayers a bill for $134,000 for his so-called private family personal vacation and a whole lot of excuses. It's a pattern. How can Canadians believe anything the Prime Minister says?
Honourable Government House Leader.
For previous Prime Ministers, the Prime Minister must always be in a position to carry out official government duties. As has been the case for previous Prime Ministers, the Prime Minister always is in contact with his office and is routinely provided with the resources during all travels, domestically and internationally, and whether on personal or government business. As has also been stated, the RCMP determines the safest route for the Prime Minister to travel. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, I'll try this in French. After having broken a number of election promises, the government continues to play fast and loose with the truth, or to say one thing and the opposite. More proof that the Prime Minister isn't telling the truth. To defend himself on his vacation, he stated that the Aga Khan's private helicopter was the only way to get to the island. How is the Liberal Prime Minister going to wiggle out of this one now, since it has been proven that there are other means of transportation? How can honest Canadians continue to have confidence in this Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker?
Leader du gouvernement.
The Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, regardless of where the Prime Minister goes, he must be in a position to fulfill his official duties. The Prime Minister is always in communication with his office and constantly receives support during travels at home and abroad, whether these trips be personal or for business. In addition, the RCMP determines the safest route for the Prime Minister to travel, the safest ways. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's review the facts. First, the Prime Minister violated the rules by getting on the Aga Khan's helicopter. Then he misled Canadians by saying, that was my only option. Oh, but today he's blaming the RCMP for that one. Mr. Speaker, then he failed to disclose the full amount of the $134,000 that his little Xmas getaway cost taxpayers. What arrogance, Mr. Speaker. So will the Prime Minister come clean and admit that he willingly and he knowingly broke the rules?
The Honourable Government House Leader. Order.
Mr. Speaker, as has been said time and time again, regardless of whether on personal or business business, the Prime Minister must travel in government aircraft. The RCMP determines the securest way for the Prime Minister to travel, and I have to say this government is committed to working hard for Canadians, and that's where our focus is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. I realize members feel strongly about topics in question period, but I urge the honourable members for St. Albert, Edmonton and Banff Airdries to contain themselves. The honourable opposition House Leader has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this trip has once again exposed the Prime Minister's bad judgment, his disrespect for the Canadian taxpayer, and his lack of integrity. Mr. Speaker, a Prime Minister should have good judgment. A Prime Minister should respect the Canadian taxpayer, and a Prime Minister should have integrity. This one can't even keep his Aga Khan holiday story straight. So, Mr. Speaker, what is the next shoe that's going to drop? What is the next thing that Canadians are going to find out that this Prime Minister has been misleading them on?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Whether the Prime Minister is, he must always be in the position to carry out his official duties. This Prime Minister made a campaign commitment to Canadians to lower taxes on middle-class Canadians by increasing taxes on the wealthiest 1% of Canadians. That's exactly what we did. Mr. Speaker, this government committed to help families with children that need it the most with the Canada Child Benefit. That's exactly what we did by delivering on the Canada Child Benefit to help families with children that need it the most. This government will continue to respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Esquimalt, Saanich Sioux.
Mr. Speaker, this government claims to be standing up for the human rights of LGBT communities around the world, yet they've neither said nor done a single thing about the campaign of mass arrests and incarceration of gay men in Chechnya. When will this government move on from symbols and platitudes and join nations, including the UK and even the US, in condemning this campaign by the Chechen government? Will the government now call for an international investigation of the arrests, torture and resulting deaths of gay men in Chechnya?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the government is concerned by any and all allegations of human rights violations in Chechnya, Russia, including to the LGBTQ2 community. Support of LGBTQ2 rights is a priority for our government, which is why the Prime Minister appointed a special advisor for LGBTQ2 issues. Our government strongly stands up for those rights in Canada and around the world. LGBTQ rights have no border, and they must be respected and promoted everywhere. The LGBTQ2 community in Russia, including Chechnya, can count on Canada's strong support.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, what an answer for a government that likes to follow the Trump administration. Why aren't they doing so in this case? Why don't they take a strong stand? There are reports of hundreds of gay men being sent to concentration camps in Chechnya. 3 of them have apparently died after having been tortured. Canadians want Liberals to take a stand alongside the LGBT community in Canada and abroad. So once again, will the government join its international counterparts and condemn these terrible violations of human rights? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, once again, we are very concerned by allegations of human rights violations in Chechnya, Russia, including LGBTQ community members. These rights, the rights of LGBTQ people, are a priority for this government. That is why the Prime Minister appointed a special advisor for the community. Our government protects these rights in Canada and abroad. These rights do not have a border. They are a priority here in Canada, and the LGBTQ community can count on our support here and abroad.
Mr. Speaker, it sure pays to be friends with the Prime Minister. We know that HoC has funneled money to the Liberal propaganda unit Canada 2020. Documents reveal that government officials decided to give Canada 2020 taxpayers money in the hopes that Canada 2020 would grant them access to senior cabinet ministers. The Prime Minister's friends at Canada 2020 twisted themselves and their program into a pretzel to make sure they could get the taxpayers' cash. Why does the Science Minister's agency feel that it needs to pay Canada 2020 to access its own government?
The Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council has a mandate to promote and share research outcomes with Canadians. As I've said before, HoC is an arm's-length organization able to issue contracts below a certain dollar amount. This fell below the dollar amount. HoC took an independent decision.
Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Seems like the minister shirking her responsibilities, Mr. Speaker. Something is clearly wrong. The science minister doesn't obviously feel comfortable around the cabinet table. She feels the need to use $20,000 of taxpayer money to have Liberal insiders at Canada 2020 lobby her cabinet colleagues on her behalf. Wow. Will the science minister finally be honest with Canadians and admit that this is blatant misuse of taxpayers' funds and it's her way of pandering to the Prime Minister and his Liberal friends at Canada 2020?
Honourable Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, given my honourable colleagues' newfound interest in science and social sciences, I can tell him that HoC supported other science-related conferences, including the Canadian Science Policy Conference, the Federation of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Royal Society...
Order, order, order. Members on all sides frequently hear things they don't like in question period, usually without reacting. I know we can all do this, so let's all try a little harder. The Honourable Minister of Science has 15 seconds left.
HoC has supported other science-related conferences, the Canadian Science Policy Conference, the Federation of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Royal Society of Canada, the Canadian Association of Postdoctoral Scholars, the Canadian Association of Graduate Studies, and the list goes on.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, the interest is why we're spending research funding dollars for infomercials to promote the Liberals. It seems the best way to talk to the Liberal front bench is if you cut a check to Liberal insiders. HoC gave $20,000 of research funding money to Canada 2020 for a Liberal innovation infomercial. Why? Because they thought it was the best way to access Liberal ministers and make their case for more funding. Why do the government's own agencies need to funnel money to the Prime Minister's childhood friend at Canada 2020 just to get in front of Cabinet?
Honourable Minister of Science.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, given my honourable colleagues' newfound interest in science, let me give you the facts. $2 billion on research and innovation infrastructure,
Order. I ask members to settle down, listen. And I encourage ministers not to say things that create disorder. The Honourable Minister of Science has a few more seconds.
Let me recount our accomplishments in science. $2 billion in research and innovation infrastructure, $900 million in the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, $125 million on artificial intelligence, $117 million in the new Canada 150 research chairs, $80 million in a new plant facility.
The Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, it's clear that no research was... Mr. Speaker, it's clear that no research was done with Canada 2020. It's essentially Liberal advertising that cost taxpayers $20,000. In light of the conclusions from scientific magazines that indicating that additional funding needs to be required for research, how can we ensure that the Liberals aren't wasting existing funding on their friends?
Mr. President.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for her question.
Go over our investments in science. $2 billion for research and innovation infrastructure, $900 million for the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, $454 million to retool on skills, $221 million for 10,000 new work-integrated learning spaces for my tax, $125 million for artificial intelligence, $117 million for the Canada 150 research chairs, $80 million for a new plant research facility.
Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The final report on federal support for fundamental science was tabled yesterday. The Naylor report challenges the government to take immediate action to reverse the decline of scientific research in Canada. So will the government commit to enacting all recommendations in this report, including number 5.5, which calls for hard gender equity targets and gender quotas? Will this report be another Liberal shelf bender, or will they take action, Mr. Speaker?
The Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. The report will help our government continue to support fundamental science and to build on the investments we've already made. $2 billion for research and innovation infrastructure, $900 million for the Canada First Research Excellence Fund, $900 million for superclusters to bring together research, government, and business, $454 million to retool on skills, $221 million for 10,000 work integrating learning spaces for our students.
The honourable member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says he's a feminist, yet when it comes to making real change happen for women in Canada, it's all talk. Canada has the 8th largest gender pay gap among the 35 OECD countries, yet this government refuses to act, knowing the most effective way to grow the economy is to bring in pay equity legislation now. Today is Equal Pay Day in Canada because in 2017 women still have to work 3.5 months longer to earn what men do in 12 months. How much longer will this Prime Minister make women wait?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we agree that the equal pay for work of equal value is a fundamental right. And that's why we're so proud to be bringing forward proactive pay equity legislation by 2018. We are in the process now of consulting with stakeholders. We want to make sure that we design a process that ensures that women get the pay that they deserve, and the process is fair for all. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Every morning, Canadians get up and we start our daily routines. We take care of our kids, bid good day to our partners, and we head to work. Every day, there are those who do the same, but their work is our safety. They run into fire, perform CPR on our loved ones, and put their lives on the line for ours and our family. Mr. Speaker, considering the impact that these community heroes have in our lives, can the Minister of Public Safety inform this House how the government is keeping its promise to support them and their families?
The honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was proud to stand with the Prime Minister on Parliament Hill today with Canadian firefighters to support the women and men who risk their lives to keep us safe, and with their families when tragedy strikes. That's why Budget 2017 includes $20 million per year for the establishment of a new tax-free benefit for the families of public safety officers who fall in the line of duty. Our aim is to have this Heroes benefit up and running by the spring of next year, and we will continue doing everything we can to support public safety officers. They deserve the respect of all Canadians.
Honourable member Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the last election, the Liberals made only 2 promises regarding standing order changes. First, to prohibit omnibus bills, and second, to prohibit parliamentary secretaries from sitting on committees. There was nothing about 4-day work weeks, there was nothing about the Prime Minister turning up 1 day a week, and there was certainly nothing about shutting down the opposition in committees. So will the government, therefore, stop pretending it has a mandate to carry through election commitments that it never made, to remove the gun that's been holding to the head of the opposition in the Procedure and Justice Affairs Committee, and to start a real conversation?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, during the election campaign, we committed to modernizing Parliament and bringing it into the 21st century. I have been asking for a conversation, a dialogue this whole time. The discussion paper that was released was in addition to the work that the PROC committee was already doing. I know that all members believe that we probably could modernize and work better in this place. I'm saying let's have the conversation, let's share our ideas, let's have constructive feedback so that we can bring this workplace into the 21st century. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Banff Airdrie. Order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals can continue to use all the buzzwords and spin that they like, but Canadians see through this blatant Liberal power grab. It's their democracy, and they won't stand for this. Liberals cannot say they're having a conversation when they're ramming through substantive changes that will remove accountability. Canadians expect the government to be held accountable, they expect legislation to be properly debated, and they expect their Prime Minister to show up and answer questions more than once a week. So, Mr. Speaker, why do the Liberals think they can make these substantive changes without the unanimous consent of all political parties?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Canadians expect all members of Parliament to work better in this place, and that's exactly why we would like to talk about some of these ideas so that we can modernize the way this place works. Last week, we saw the Prime Minister in question period answer all questions, not just in the leaders round, but from members of Parliament on both sides of this House. We saw that the Prime Minister was in question period in addition to the other days. There are no Liberal members suggesting that the Prime Minister only attend once a week. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, more Liberal spin and buzzwords, Mr. Speaker. But the opposition parties are firmly against this Liberal power grab. And the House Leader can try to call that a veto or whatever she likes, but Canadians see through this sham. Standing order changes should be done with the unanimous consent of all parties. Hear, hear. As was the case in the previous Parliament when the Liberal Vice Chair on Proc used a veto on minor changes on the standing orders. That's right, Mr. Speaker. None other than the Government House Leader's Parliamentary Secretary understood the need for unanimous consent. So why was unanimous consent good for the Liberals then and not now?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
All members of Parliament to be the voice that Canadians expect them to be. In the election campaign, we committed to Canadians that their voice would be heard in this place, and that's why we committed to modernizing the way this place works. It's an important conversation to have. It's an important discussion to have. I'm saying let's share our ideas, let's have a constructive conversation, and let's bring this workplace into the 21st century. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, once upon a time, the Liberal leader made enticing promises to get elected of openness and transparency, but the honeymoon was short-lived because beneath the surface, the true nature of the Liberals created huge, out-of-control deficits. No more discussion. The Prime Minister now aims to take control of everything without the unanimous support of all members. Will the Government House Leader hit the brakes before it's too late to protect our democracy and our Parliament? The Honourable Government House Leader. During the election campaign, we committed to modernize Parliament and make it a 21st century workplace. I'd like to encourage all members to participate in the conversation, to share their ideas. I think it's a very important conversation to have. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, after a year of study and consultations by both the Trade Committee and the government, the Liberals still won't take a stand on the TPP. Recently, the minister met with TPP counterparts in Chile, which shows that the Liberals are actively pursuing this job-killing agreement. Tens of thousands of Canadians have told the Liberals that they have deep concerns with the TPP. What else will it take for this Liberal government to stop pursuing this bad deal?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for this question. She knows well because I reported to her when I came back from Chile. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the Asia-Pacific region is a priority for government. We owe it to Canadian workers, Canadian families, Canadian exporters to look at expanding market, Mr. Speaker, because growth, more trade equals more growth equals more jobs, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to have an ambitious trade agenda when it comes to the Asia-Pacific region.
Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Dean of the Dalhousie School of Management was unequivocal. If the Liberals truly want to help Canada's dairy industry to repair the damage CETA will do, they should give processors tariff quotas of 17,700 tons. The industry has been waiting months for an answer, and the Liberals have left them in the dark. CETA comes into force in 3 months. Less than 3 months, Mr. Speaker. Can the Liberals promise today that they will give processors these tariff quotas? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister of International Trade. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. As she knows full well, Mr. Speaker, we're listening to industry. I met with people from the dairy industry all across the country. This is a matter we are following closely, and we will make a decision soon on behalf of dairy producers all across the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' rush to restore education funding to the UN Relief and Works Agency despite abundant evidence that UNRWA employees actively support terrorism and incite anti-Semitism. Now, the minister assured Canadians the $25 million would teach Palestinian children tolerance and respect. But a detailed new study by UN Watch reveals 60 new examples of hate on UNRWA teacher and staff Facebook pages. Mr. Speaker, our Conservative government effectively delivered aid around UNRWA. Why can't the Liberals?
Honourable Minister of International Cooperation.
Mr. Speaker, since we restored our funding to UNRWA, Palestinian refugees we've been following the organization's activities closely. Since Canada has been at the table, this monitoring has been ever closer. We're looking at the employees' records. We're stressing the importance of independence. We're auditing their activities, and we can assure you that Canadian money is being well spent.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. UN Watch also revealed that the Liberals have asked UNRWA officials for help to find a way to help spin Canadians that more funding to UNRWA is a good idea. So what this report also reveals to us that this UN organization has almost 100 cases of school teachers, principals, as well as UNRWA employees that are actually encouraging jihadi terrorism, anti-Semitism, denying the Holocaust, celebrating Hitler, and actually promoting maps to their students where Israel isn't even on the map. So my question to the Liberals are, knowing what we know about this organization, why are we funding teachers, principals, UNRWA workers who support anti-Semitism?
The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, once again, I can assure you that we are closely monitoring the activities of UNRWA. We are checking the school books. We're satisfied with progress that's been made. Mr. Speaker, even the Department of Defense in Israel published a comment about UNRWA saying,
A balanced, positive curriculum with universal values free from violence and incitement after criticism directed at the agency. This is from the Israeli Ministry of Defense.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Well, it's not happening, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Canada has urged Venezuela's repressive president to release political prisoners. Now, Lilian Tintori, the wife of Leopoldo Lopez, Venezuela's leading political prisoner, has met OAS Secretary General Almagro, President Trump, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, the presidents of Mexico and Argentina, even the Pope. But for some reason, Senora Tintori can't get a meeting with the Prime Minister. Why won't the Prime Minister take a meeting and send a strong message to President Maduro?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we call on the government of Venezuela to respect its international commitments to democracy and human rights. Canada co-sponsored an OAS resolution to reiterate just that. Denying freedom of political participation contradicts Venezuela's international obligations and prevents progress for the country. In concert with our OAS partners, we call on Venezuela to hold elections, restore democratic order, release political prisoners, and work with its National Assembly in the best interests of the Venezuelan people.
Member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For Canadians living in some of our largest cities, the dream of buying their first home is becoming more difficult. And our existing homeowners want to ensure that their home is protected. Over the past year alone, the average house price in Toronto has grown by more than a third, with ripple effects across the Greater Toronto area. Can the Minister of Finance please update this House on his hopes of getting meetings with our provincial and municipal counterparts? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to start by thanking the member from Brampton East for his question. Indeed, it is one of the Finance Minister's responsibilities to work to ensure a healthy and competitive and stable housing market. That's why, after years of inaction, we've taken 2 actions to actually deal with pockets of risk in Toronto and Vancouver. We remain concerned with dramatic price increases, the implications for the market, and the implications for household affordability. So that's why I've asked the Ontario Minister of Finance, Charles Sousa, and the Toronto Mayor to have a meeting so that we can ensure that we have coordinated policy actions to deal with this ongoing challenge. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Kamloops Thompson.
Mr. Speaker, the
Order.
Minister says transparency.
Order. Members will come to order. 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 Members will come to order. The honourable member for Kamloops Thompson Caribou.
The Minister stated that transparency is important, but it's now been 16 months since she gutted the Transparency Act. This morning, we heard testimony from Loretta Bernstock from Alexander Cree First Nations. She told us, quote, "It's virtually impossible as a band member to get full disclosure of our finances. We have no say. We are kept out. Even Liberal backbenchers agree with the intention of our act." So would the Minister stand up and tell First Nations people, will it be months, years, or never that they will get the same access to information that all other Canadians enjoy?
Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the member back to this House and wish her son all the best. It is everyone, including First Nations governments, supports transparency and accountability. We have been working with Indigenous organizations, the AFN, the Aboriginal Financial Officers Association, on ways to enhance mutual accountability. The government's also reaching out to community members and leadership through the comprehensive online engagement and is planning in-person sessions across the country over the coming months. We will continue to work in full partnership with First Nations to improve mutual accountability.
Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Almost 3 years ago, the Mount Polley mine disaster spilled 25 million cubic meters of toxic waste into Quesnel Lake, which provides drinking water for local communities and is home to one of the world's greatest sockeye salmon runs. Both Imperial Metals and the BC Liberal government were found negligent. But the corporation faced no fines and the BC government refused to take responsibility. This Prime Minister promised to usher in a new era of protection for Canadian waterways. So where is it? Why is the Minister letting both guilty parties off the hook? And when will he enforce the Fisheries Act?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Speaker, my friend knows very well that not only are we committed to enforcing the Fisheries Act, we're also committed to investing and improving marine safety and our ability to do world-class science to ensure that all the species that the member referred to are in fact protected in the most sustainable way. He knows the Prime Minister announced in his province in November a historic investment in ocean protections. This will allow us not only in the case of an offence under the Fisheries Act, Mr. Speaker, to prosecute those offenders, but also to prevent these incidents from happening.
Honourable member for South Shore, St. Margaret's.
Mr. Speaker, last October, the House unanimously agreed to my motion, M40, which called on the government, in collaboration with provincial, territorial, municipal and Indigenous organizations, to take meaningful steps to address the issues of abandoned and derelict vessels within 6 months. Can the Minister of Transport please provide an update to Canadians on this commitment?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member from the South Shore, St. Margaret's, for her tireless advocacy on this file. I share her concerns as well as those of her constituents and of all Canadians. That's why I was delighted to be with the Prime Minister on the 7th of November in Vancouver when we announced the historic Oceans Protection Plan, which includes a strategy to address the issue of abandoned and derelict vessels. And even better, in Budget 2017, we consolidated the $1.5 billion that will be required to do the Oceans Protection Plan. These are very meaningful steps in the right direction.
The honourable member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, from Bombardier to the Aga Khan, not to mention Chinese millionaires, we've seen that this Prime Minister likes lining his cronies' pockets. It turns out the director of The Story of Us, John English, was also the biographer of Trudeau Sr. The series will also be used for educational purposes. This will surely benefit Mr. English financially. Did the Prime Minister use $675 million in public funds to indirectly finance another one of his cronies? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for her question, and I'd like to remind her how important it is that CBC is arm's length from this government. Obviously, the goal is always to see to it that CBC is responsible and accountable for its content, and given that she's referring to CBC programming, I would encourage her to direct her question directly to the CBC. Thank you. Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes. Mr. Speaker, Liberal procrastination has gone on long enough. Since the Jordan decision in Quebec alone, applications for stays have shot up from 574 to 809, a 70% increase. Quibbling over the number of judicial vacancies is not the way for Ottawa to solve the problem. If Quebec says Ottawa needs to appoint 14 more judges, Quebec needs 14 more judges. What are the 40 Liberals from Quebec waiting for? Why aren't they calling on the Justice Minister to get on with the appointments to the bench?
Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, we recognize the issue of delays is an important one. That's why we are taking concrete action to address this issue. I am pleased to have appointed 47 Superior Court justices, 22 deputy judges, 3 from the province of Quebec. There are 6 vacancies in the province of Quebec, and I will be moving forward with filling those vacancies in the near future. The issue of delays is something that is an issue that the federal government, the provinces, and the territories need to address together in terms of the cultural shift that is required to eliminate the delays.
Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, regarding the Jordan decision, Jacques Fournier, Chief Justice of the Quebec Superior Court, was clear. The ball is in Ottawa's court. We understand the Liberals are busy with the marijuana file, and ethical issues, but meanwhile, criminals are being set free because the prosecution takes too long. Now is not the time to quibble over the number of judges, Mr. Speaker. Now is the time for action. Does the minister realize her procrastination is endangering public safety?
The Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, we are taking action in this regard. My office has had the opportunity to speak with the Chief Justice. We will continue to have conversations with the province of Quebec. I will continue to add to the 47 appointments that I have already made to the Superior Courts through our open and transparent process. But I will say, with respect to court delays, there is no one solution to this issue. That is why I'm working in a collaborative manner with all of my provincial and territorial counterparts, including within the province of Quebec, because the only way that we're going to be able to resolve the issues of delays is if we do it together.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly on a point of order.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, merci.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to clarify. You gave us notice that you would be issuing a ruling on a question of privilege, and those are, of course, of the utmost importance to the House. So I just wanted to find out, and based on my personal experience, I wanted to confirm that the ruling would be given before returning to orders of the day.
C'est au président de décider.
It is up to the Speaker to decide when to render decisions, and that will be the case at some point.
Well, member for Elmwood's Transcona is raising a point of order.
Much, Mr. Speaker. I couldn't help but hear during question period the government House Leader said that the Prime Minister answered every question in question period last Wednesday. Having answered a question myself, Mr. Speaker, I know that not to be true. I wonder if you want to...